Noticing language is an essential part of critical thinking. Whether you're thinking about the details of a mathematics problem or just the kinds of arguments you might hear around the workplace about whether a particular piece of hardware or software is worth buying, or whether you're talking about political arguments or just even gossip. To effectively engage critical thinking, you need to be particularly attentive to language. Now, some of you might have learned grammar at school. Some of you might have been in classes where you were taught grammar at school, but not learned it. Some of you might never have been taught it. So some basic grammar, or things about how to know what you're really trying to say, are important for you to know. Let's look at the basic structure of an English sentence. Here's an example of the simplest sentence you can get. There are just two words. One of them is the subject, and the other one is the verb. That's what you need to have a sentence, a subject and a verb. That's it. It can be just two words. The verb tells you what the subject did, is doing, or will do. The subject will most frequently be a person or animal, an object, or a place. For example, New York rocks, or robots help. Here are some more examples of simple sentences. Trees grow. People sleep. Jan laughs. John talks. Now, this is all very good, but much of our language is not that simple. We often want to add meaning, and we add meaning to a verb by using a type of word called an adverb. Let's look at this one. So quickly is an adverb because it adds meaning to the verb runs. It tells you how the person is running. It gives you a fuller representation of what is happening. And by the word representation, we mean the image you get in your mind, the sounds you imagine, the feelings, that is the body sensations you get, and sometimes smells and tastes. So collectively everything you think of in your imagination. In this example, the person is running quickly, which gives a very different representation, for example, than saying he runs slowly, or he runs awkwardly, or he runs stylishly. Notice what happens in your imagination as a result of putting an adverb into the example sentences we saw earlier. Trees grow slowly. People sleep soundly. Jan laughs loudly. John talks quietly. Now, looking again at he runs quickly, there are degrees of being quick even. Notice how your image and sense of running guy changes when we add very, for example. The word very is also an adverb, and it shows that an adverb can add meaning not only to a verb, but also to another adverb. Let's add some more meaning to those sentences we saw earlier. And once again, notice what happens in your imagination when we add the extra description. Trees grow quite slowly. Quite is an adverb. People sleep really soundly. Really and soundly are both adverbs. Jan laughs extraordinarily loudly. And John talks extremely quietly. Earlier, we said that the subject of a sentence can be a person or animal, an object, for example, a robot or a rock, or an abstract word, a concept, like friendship or love or success. For example, in the sentence, friendship is a wonderful thing. In the sentence you're looking at, the word he is standing in place of some person, either by name or description. For example, John runs or the tall man runs. These kinds of words which stand in place of a noun are called pronouns. So what, you might ask? Well, in the first place you simply need to know that they exist. Eventually, you might start to notice the difference that the artful use of them can make to languages. If you're reading a novel at some stage, perhaps after you get all your assignments in, then you might like to look at what happens when the writer changes from using words like I, he, she, you, we, they, and how it affects your point of view of what's happening in a story, for example. And now let's put in some actual nouns. So instead of he, we'll put in, for example, the dog. Dog is a noun. Broadly speaking, as we've said, we can say there are three groups or classes of nouns. There are common nouns, which name things like a table, chair, house, rock, sky, or water. There are proper nouns, which are the names of people and places. And in English, they usually have capital letters to start them. And as we mentioned on the last slide, there are abstract nouns that name concepts and ideas. For example, friendship, recognition, economy, politics, fun. If we want to add description to a noun, we use an adjective. So in the sentence you're looking at now, frisky is an adjective. So remember, adverbs add meaning to a verb so far, or to another adverb. And in this case, the word frisky is an adjective giving us a fuller description of dog. So an adjective describes a noun. Let's look at a few more. Giant trees grow slowly. Calm people sleep soundly. Excitable Jan laughs loudly. And shy John talks quietly. Now, you remember adverbs? Just to remind you, adverbs add to, as we said earlier, verbs, other adverbs, but guess what? They also add meaning to adjectives. So adverbs are amazingly powerful words. Amazingly, by the way, is an adverb in that last sentence. So here are some more adverbs adding description to adjectives in this case. Breathtakingly giant trees grow slowly. Extremely calm people sleep soundly. Totally excitable Jan laughs loudly. Very shy John talks quietly. Okay, so enough of trees and sleepy, excitable, shy people. What has this got to do with critical thinking? Well, people will use carefully chosen words to affect how you interpret things and to shape the way you make meaning. What happens to your thoughts about the politician in the sentence when we describe them in different ways? For example, the disgraced politician announced the plans. Compare that to the exhausted politician announced the plans. Or the haughty politician announced the plans. If you're not sure what haughty means, you might need to look that up in a dictionary. Of course, we can shift your focus from the politician to the plans with some carefully selected adverbs. Which plans, out of the ones we're going to talk about in a moment, do you think are likely to be the useful ones? The politician announced the so-called plans. The politician announced the exciting plans. The politician announced the dubious plans. At this point, by the way, you might like to start thinking beyond the words that you read just on the screen or on a piece of paper or that you hear. For example, are the plans really exciting? And if they are, what is it exactly that makes them exciting? Those are the sorts of questions you need to be thinking about as you're listening to others or reading what they've written. Now, what happens to your thoughts about the politician and the plans when we add some descriptive words to the basic sentence? Let's have a look at this. The excessively haughty politician announced the dubious plans at 11 p.m. on Saturday night. What do you think about the politician? What do you think about the plans and the timing of the announcement? Let's have a look at another example. See how you feel about the politician this time and the plans. The courageously exhausted politician announced the exciting, hard-won plans at 11 p.m. on Saturday night. What do you think about the politician and the plans now? Notice the difference that the choice of words makes to your interpretation and your thoughts about what is actually led up to these events. Okay, now it's time for you to practice. On this slide, you may want to pause the video and take time to identify the words in the description that you consider have been deliberately chosen to affect your opinion of the president that's being talked about. After you've done that, you can continue for some more ideas. So pause now, have a look through, and decide which words you think have been deliberately chosen to affect your opinion. You might have found some others apart from the ones that have been marked, but the most important thing is that you're becoming increasingly aware of the effect of language on how you interpret events and people. Now, take time to read this different version, pause if you need to, and notice how you respond to this one. And yet another version of the same event, but in this case described differently again. Read through and notice your reaction to the description this time. After this, your task is to notice, that is, pay attention to the language others use to persuade you, and also notice how your choice of language affects others.